So here is how hydraulic turbine would look like, and we have one nearby, just like, I don't know, 10 minutes drive, the Keystone, right? The Keystone hydraulic dam. And it's basically whenever you have elevation in the head, high water over here and down and a little bit lower on the other side, that difference is enough to generate power from those turbines. Of course, you have to pick the right turbine so that you can get the maximum efficiency from it. And in that sketch he's trying to show you that the head is a little bit smaller, but in other hydraulic dams in Africa and in China, this head is like really huge, right? So it's not just like few meters, it could be like, 100 meter difference. So it can be really big. All right. So ideally, if there is no losses whatsoever in the pipes and the valves and the turns, how much is the maximum energy that you can generate from this head? If I told you there's like 10 meter head, okay, between those two levels, and the flow rate is 10 meter cube per second. So I give you the flow rate that we can allow to go through this the river. And by the way, sometimes the flow rate through the turbine is not controlled by the energy consideration. It's controlled by the fact that they actually need the water downstream, right? There is like field that need to be irrigated, or people that need to drink, okay, or just because the water has been raining forever on the upstream and they just need to send that flow rate, right? Otherwise the lake will flood basically the people nearby. So if this is the case, you had this much head, H is, let me get a bigger pen, H is 10 meter, okay, before and after, and the flow rate that we allow to go through, Q, is 10 meter cube per second, and H is 10 meter. What is the ideal power that you can, if you put a turbine over here, how much power you would dream of getting? What would we do? We'll apply what? Bernoulli equation between 1 and 2. So this chapter, in a lot of it, he's basically dealing with that turbine from the point of view of energy. It's not the plate design and what's the velocity at the inlet and velocity at the exit. He's looking to that turbine as basically a black box. Okay? He said, I have this energy before, I have this energy after. How much energy basically did we manage to extract from this thing? So applying Bernoulli equation between 1 and 2, so over here is the high head and over here is the small head. What is Bernoulli equation? P1 over rho plus V1 square over 2 plus GZ1, right? This is all the energy at point 1, correct? Equal to energy at 2 plus V2 square over 2 plus GZ2 and the work of the turbine. Okay, so the work that the turbine extract need to be written here in terms of the same units like those guys. So what is the units of all those terms? B over rho and V square over 2 and GZ. What is the units of those guys? Joule per kilogram. Okay, and it's not that clear why it's joule per kilogram, but it will be clear if you remember that kinetic energy for a sphere, if this pencil or pen basically travel like this, and I told you how much energy this guy have, you would say half mv square. So the energy, kinetic energy, is half mv square. And if this pen is going up like this, I told you how much potential energy does this guy got, you would say mgz. So mgz is potential energy, half mv square is the kinetic energy. So all those guys, the V square over 2 and the GZ, they are all missing the M to become joules. So all of them are joule per kilogram. Okay? So GZ, Z of course by itself, what's the unit of Z? Head, meter, right? Or feet. So GZ become joule per kilogram. So the power that the turbine extracts can, if we write it over here, we need to write it in terms of joule per kilogram, right? So that's like the specific work, right? It's like I'm gonna say it like W or something, like small W, work turbine like this, and it's joule per kilogram. But sometimes they write this power that the turbine extract in units of head. They will tell you the turbine is extracting 7 meter worth of energy. How is that possible? Just like GZ is joule per kilogram, you can actually write, instead of that term, you write GH turbine. Okay? So the equation would be B over rho plus V1 square over 2 plus GZ1 equal B plus V plus GH turbine. Okay? GH turbine. Why? Okay. GH turbine. Okay? This, what we wrote right now, is basically assuming that there is nothing being lost in the process. All the energy at one would be basically extracted and then you would leave here. Okay? Chances are the piping system, the turns that the water has to take will all involve losses, right? And so not only the energy is going to go to the turbine, but some of it will also go to the friction and the losses. So H loss. Okay, and those H losses, then people spend time try to calculate this H loss. But we know H loss is probably major loss and minor loss. Pipe and elbows and valves and turns and all those fittings and valves, those are called the minor loss. So people will express this H loss in a pipe by, what's the formula for it? F L over D, right? Multiply by V square over 2G. Correct? And the minor loss, all the valves, like say bunch of valves and bunch of elbows, they will express them in terms of coefficient. This basically loss coefficient, they call it K, and that K is multiplied by V square over 2G. So if you open a manual or textbook for all those minor loss, and our textbooks say the one of the best one is the Crane Company Report 410, that have a compilation of all different valves and different elbow, and they will express them in K, but sometime, especially also in the HVAC industry, they express the elbow or the turn or the louver in term of, rather than K, they will express it in term of equivalent lengths. So you would say it's as if you have a pipe, but make the pipe a little bit longer. That valve there is like the pipe has increased by 2 feet. So it will be F L equivalent over D, right? And let's put sigma over here too. So plus sigma. So all those basically are gonna become basically gonna share the love with the turbine. So the energy will get some going to all those losses and some will go to the turbine. Okay? So let's go to the textbook and see how is it written. There's a third way to write those losses too. Okay, and we'll see it over here. So here is the inlet, right? The inlet is over here, and here is the exit of the pipe, and the turbine and inside the dam basically is over here. And you got bunch of valves and bunch of elbows, and right. Interesting, the pressure at 1 and the pressure at 2 are equal, and they are both atmospheric. So this is weird, because you can see that this pressure is like here, and the pressure over here is way down, and we said this is not like 2 meter, this could be 100 meter. So how is pressure here and here, they are all the same, and I have 100 meter between them.
Because where the pipe actually is, so like the inlet isn't actually at the base of the dam, it's up higher where the static pressure wouldn't be as high.
But my question is like, why the pressure, the atmospheric pressure here and the atmospheric pressure here are the same, except it's despite the fact that they have like maybe 100 meter between them. No, it's not the long pipe. It's because if I tell you what is the pressure over here right now, and you say it's P atmosphere 101,325, and I think, so what is the pressure in my office upstairs? And you will tell me it's still atmospheric. And I'm like, what? We have like 4 meter between us. And you say, fine, what do you want? You want a rho GH air? Fine, get 1.2 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 4 meter. How much is that? 40 Pascal. So, okay, the pressure here is atmosphere, 100 kilopascal, and the pressure upstairs is 100 kilopascal, right? Minus 0.04 kilopascal. So it's nothing. So what I'm trying to say is that the atmospheric pressure does not drop over 10 meters. It's nothing, right? I mean, if you go to the Himalaya or try to climb Mount Everest, yes, the pressure will drop and you'll have hard time breathing, right? But over small distance like this, the air will not really matter. But if you want to calculate the pressure here of the water, here will be B atmosphere, and here would be B atmosphere plus raw water, which is 1,000 times GH, right? So the dam will carry a lot of pressure in this place, but as far as the air over here and the air over here, it's nothing. Okay? So in this equation, when we are saying P1 and P2, this and this are easily 0, because I guess we are doing B1 gauge and B2 gauge. Okay? Furthermore, V1 square is also 0. What is V1? That is the velocity at the top over here. Okay? And so why the velocity here is 0? Isn't the surface is dropping? In case the lake is like confined. Yes, it could be dropping, but because the pipe cross-section area is way smaller than the lake cross-section area, the velocity of that surface going down is almost 0. Okay, and that also can be extended to big tanks, right? You would think the velocity here is 0. Okay, so we can make V1 0. Unfortunately, V2 is not 0. Okay, V2 is not 0. Why it's not 0? Because I mean, we need the flow to actually leave this pipe, right? So V2, unfortunately, it's not 0. You wish it's 0. And in some problem in the textbook, when you say what is the maximum power you can extract from the turbine, not only they neglect the pipe friction, but they even say for maximum, you know, like dream wise, is like V2 is 0. But it's not. You still have to have V2, right? But if you're like thinking what is the maximum ever, you would think V2 is 0. It's like when you say what's the maximum I can save every year, you assume I'm not going to spend anything in food or drink or rent, or so your maximum saving is your salary, but it will never happen. But it's just like you are saying, what is the maximum ever I can see? All my salary, that's the maximum ever. Okay? So here he wrote here the equation. Okay? So here is the Bernoulli equation. Don't think it's really that clear, but it's between energy at 1 equal energy at 2 plus the losses plus the work turbine. Okay, joule per kilogram. Alright? But actually in this scenario, because what is the units here of this equation? The units here in this equation are all meter. So not only did he write it in the term of P over rho, he even wrote it in the, so he even wrote it like this: P over rho G plus V1 over 2G plus Z1 equal B2 over rho G plus V2 square over 2G plus Z2 plus the FL over D, right, multiply by V square over 2G plus the H term. So this is all units of meter, 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 meter. Everything is in meter. So we can write Bernoulli equation in terms of joule per kilogram like this, or you can, if you divide over G, it become just H, just head. Okay? So this is what is he doing over here. Right? So dividing the work turbine over G, the work turbine was GH over G, that become like H turbine. Make sense? Okay? Work turbine over G, it become H. And so here are the three way he can make the losses in the pipes and valves and stuff. What are the three methods? The equivalent lengths, FL equivalent over D. The K, okay, which is the loss coefficient, and another way is the C coefficient multiplied by the F. So CF is equivalent to K basically. So again, you open the manual for those fittings, and he will tell you here is the equivalent length, or here is the loss coefficient K, or here is basically our C, so that you can multiply by the F. Okay, so the C, they call it the minor loss. Okay, so end of the day, you figure out that the work that you are getting from the turbine is the delta Z minus all the losses, right? So if I write this, and we said those all will go away, and this is 0, so this is what's driving, and everything else is basically eating from it, right? So Z1 minus Z2, that is basically the delta Z that's available to you in the lake, is going to be equal to H turbine minus the losses, right? And the losses we said is sigma FL over D plus sigma K, okay, plus V square over 2G, V square 2 over 2G. So you can see how the V2 is basically kind of, sorry, plus, is kind of a loss. V2 square is kind of a loss. Okay, and they would call it this basically the exit loss coefficient. The fact that we have to let the flow leave, unfortunately we have to let it leave to get the power from it, then it's considered as basically a loss. And you can write it, actually it needs to be like this, sigma K, and then you write plus 1 over here. Okay, and so that one is the exit loss coefficient. Okay, so if you are dreaming, if you are really dreaming, you could say, well, I'm not going to have any losses in the pipes. If you are dreaming, you would say, I don't have any elbows. If you are even dreaming more, you would say, I don't even have exit condition. Okay, And they try to achieve that dream, to have zero exit velocity by doing what? If you are the one designing this dam, and you see the water leaving the turbine, and you would like to minimize that V2 square as much as you can, what do? Your boss came to you and you said, we lose a lot of losses in that turbine. I want to maximize our output from this turbine. Help us reduce the losses in that one guy. How do you help him? Anyone? Gradually increase the exit area. Exactly. They call this draft tube. So the exit of the tube of the turbine, rather than just having a pipe, they make it like really big. Okay? And so this is not just energy wise, you are increasing the energy output by decreasing V2, but it's also because you don't wanna what? Erosion. You don't want very high velocity to basically go and skid the surface, right? But it's actually also the energy equation. It really helped. The draft tube really increased the output of the turbine by reducing, not to zero, but I mean if I can reduce this V2 to 0.5, that would be really nice, right? Because that term is V squared. So reducing the velocity to twice as much, and that's just by increasing the area twice as big, I get a boost in that term. Okay? So does anyone has a smart question for a free quiz? After I explain this, does anything does not make sense, or you wanna criticize what I said? I'll give you free quiz if you tell me what doesn't really make sense in this argument. So here's 1 and here's 2. Right? 2 is like where the exit is. And I just told you, we make the exit really big and that helps the energy equation. You get more energy available to you now for the turbine. Any bad thing about this? Anything does not make sense? That story doesn't fly? Anything? Huh? Yes.
How is the diameter of the pipe all the way down? That's the diameter of the pipe coming out of the...
Excellent. What's your name?
Yeah.
So you got a free quiz. So that Ryan, right? Ryan is saying, that's great, you are reducing the loss over here, but that turbine, why would it care? That turbine still have that pipe at the exit. So how did you get me? If I am the turbine, how does this help me? I will still have the same energy available to me. So who would answer Ryan for another free quiz? No, Ryan is wrong. This pipe this will help the turbine. How does it help the turbine? I don't see change in the velocity over here. So how is that going to give the turbine extra energy? As far as the turbine is concerned, the pipe exit is still the same with or without the draft tube. The velocity is the same with or without the draft tube. So how is that helping? A free quiz for Jairus. So Jairus is saying, yes, if you add this draft tube, you didn't really change the velocity over here, but if you do Bernoulli between this place and that place, you will figure out that the pressure right now here is not atmospheric. The pressure here is atmospheric. Okay? And if we took this draft tube, the pressure here will be atmospheric. But if we add this draft tube, now the atmospheric pressure moves over here, and now this pressure is lower. So adding this part actually lowered the pressure at the exit of the tube, of the turbine. So the turbine now, rather than operating between the atmosphere and the atmosphere and just a little bit delta H, now it's operating between the atmosphere and negative the atmosphere. Okay, so adding this guy lowered the pressure over here. Okay. However, you know, for the analysis, we just basically we think of this as a black box. You know, we don't go in this part. We just basically say we give you the energy here, and we expect we got it from here. Here's our 1 and here's our 2. Okay, and so what's your velocity at 1, 0? What's your velocity at 2? Not 0, but pretty slow. That's what your exit velocity. The atmosphere, fine, and the difference then between those delta Z will end up being the H turbine minus whatever friction you have. Okay? Make sense? Very good. So he will add his losses, and he will figure basically how much is work turbine. Okay, delta Z minus all the losses, and the problem can give you stuff. Okay, for the calculating the F, the K, and the C, and you can do this, and you can get the energy. So what we just calculated here is H turbine, or you multiply the H turbine times G and you get yourself work turbine, specific work. What units again? Specific work, joule per kilogram. So now if I would like to figure out how much is megawatt the Keystone Dam is doing, if he has like 10-meter head on it, how I can turn this into megawatt? How can I turn the joule per kilogram to joule per second? What do I need? M dot, right? So the power, W dot, is going to be M dot multiplied by that specific work, or it's going to be M dot multiplied by that GH turbine. Okay, and M dot of course is rho multiplied by Q, the flow rate, time GH turbine. So that is the power of the turbine, and the unit here will be joule per second, right? So rho Q, my handwriting will improve every year. Like it sucks at the beginning of the year, but at the end, like I can do painting for you. It's like gonna be awesome at the end. Okay, just my hand need to get used to the pencil. Okay, so again the power is gonna be rho Q multiplied by work turbine. Small work, specific work turbine. Very good. So, okay, rho Q W turbine. That's why he shouldn't rewrite small big W, small W. And he's reminding us in the textbook that F, you know, in case he didn't give us the F, and we want to calculate the F in a pipe, how do we calculate the F for all those friction? Where does F come from? Yeah, the Moody chart, right? Came from the Moody chart. There is this Moody chart that have the F on the y-axis, and it has the Reynolds on the x-axis. And when you are laminar, only when you are laminar, there is one curve, and that curve is 64 divided by the Reynolds. But if you are turbulent, and that happens when the Reynolds number is 4,000 or higher, so if you are less than 2,300, you are laminar. If you are more than 4,000, you are turbulent. When you are turbulent, you have all those curves, and those curves are for different. What are those curves are? Does anyone remember Moody chart? Epsilon over D. All those curves are for different epsilon over D, and epsilon is D is the pipe diameter, of course, right? So that's D, and epsilon is the roughness of the pipe, and that's material thing. Is the pipe concrete? Is the pipe cast iron? Is the pipe stainless steel? Is it stainless steel and forged? Is it stainless steel and, you know, all those different pipe things? You will get basically the material, and you figure out what is epsilon. So when people have the Moody chart, they just read the Reynolds number and the epsilon over d and they go get the F. But also there is a bunch of equation rather than using the Moody chart, right? And so those equations are written in our textbook. He got Helland formula, it's over here. You got what, 0.3, and then you got epsilon over d over here. See, epsilon divided by 3.7d, and you got the Reynolds number. Okay, and there's bunch of formulas basically. Helland is the famous one. Holbrook is also the Moody chart, but it's implicit. There's explicit formula that is not as accurate, like Swami and Jane. There's all those formulas to calculate the F from. Or you can just open the Moody chart and read the number. Okay? Questions? So once we get the F, then the H loss or H friction in the pipe is simply that F that you just calculated multiplied by L over D V square over 2G. Okay? Where of course L is the length of the pipe, D is the diameter of the pipe, and V is the velocity in the pipe. Okay? That's the H loss. Good. Good. So there are different design for those hydraulic turbine, and before we explain this graph, let's see what are those different design. There is axial hydraulic turbine, and those axial hydraulic turbine is like a ceiling fan, meaning the air come in the axial direction, and he leave in the axial direction. Of course, he come with a twist, right? The flow would have to come here swirling, and hopefully he leave the turbine all axial. So the turbine consume all the angular momentum. Okay? So note again, from energy point of view, we are turning pressure, we are turning head into kinetic energy, right? But when you go to the detail and see what's really happening, how does this exchange happen? The head become velocity, right? The drop basically accelerate the flow, and so you'll end up with a velocity, and then that velocity to be extracted by something that's spinning need to be not just straight velocity, but it need to be a swirling velocity. So you got all those guide vanes, and so those guide vanes, that's what I'm trying to show by those things. Those guide vanes, they will get the flow that's coming into the stator into swirling, right? And so you come here with V1 theta, huge V1 theta, and then you leave with V2 theta equal 0. And the torque equation, torque is m dot r1 m dot r2 V2 theta minus r1 V1 theta. And it will see that there's huge V1 theta and there is 0 V2 theta. And the torque will be big, and that torque multiplied by omega is the power that will be extracted. Okay? So you see there is like two sides of the coin. From energy point of view, head just became energy for us. But the minute detail is, no, you need to spin it, and then the spinning get basically used by the rotor, right? So those are the axial machine, and you can see the size of the person, right? So those are huge. Okay, and then the shaft is here, and then the generator is sitting on the top. And notice how because it's a turbine, the torque in that equation will be against the direction of rotation, because the torque is not rotating the turbine. No, in this case the torque will be opposing the motion. The torque is actually coming from the generator, the load that you are driving. Okay, so as the fluid going through that rotor, he is not feeling he's being pushed by the rotor. He's like, why this rotor doesn't want to move? He's like, move, get out, I want to get I want to go through. So the fluid is really pushing on the rotor, and the rotor, depending on the torque, is like, no, I'm not going to move. I have a generator on top of me. I cannot move. You really have to do more work on me. Okay? So that's why when we calculate the equation for the torque, you will see the negative sign. Okay? So the R2 V theta 2 is 0 minus the R1 V theta 1. So you get yourself minus. So the torque will have a minus multiplied by V theta 1. So whatever V theta 1 direction, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, the torque will be opposite to it because of that minus. Okay? And physically, because he's resisting the motion. He's not spinning the fluid. He's unspinning the fluid. Right? Make sense? Very good. So now, to a certain degree, there is also the same thing happen in the centrifugal machine or radial machine. So why this is radial machine? Again, this big pipe. What is this big pipe? This pipe is coming from the top, from the high level, and it's coming around the rotor, distributing water to different part of the rotor. So the rotor get water from everywhere. And before the water go straight to the rotor, we do what? See that red thing? What are those red things? Those red plates, what they are doing? Spinning the fluid, the inlet guide wave. They don't want the flow to come just radially falling in. They want the flow to come with a spin. Okay? And so that velocity is coming now tangentially, hit those plates, and they leave down from here. So this is called basically a Francis turbine, and it's radial. Right? Why it's radial? Because the flow come in the radial direction and he leave. And when I say he's coming radial, you could have said, well, didn't he also come radially from here? He came to the whole housing radially, but as far as the rotor is concerned, this particular one is axial. Because the water come to the rotor, the moving part axial, and leave in the axial direction. But here, this one basically come to the rotor in the radial direction, right? Does this make sense? So now that top surface over here, if you look at the wall, it's not flat. It's a little bit going down. So then the flow is not pure radial. If it's pure radial, then it's radial machine. But if it's coming like this, then it's a little bit not all radial, not really axial. So they call it a mixed machine. When the flow comes in mixed direction. Okay? And the third kind. The third kind is, I wanna shut this down. The third kind is this. This is called built-in wheel. Okay? And this one, you know, it looks like childish, but actually it's really useful for very high head. If you have a big dam, very high head, you actually use this one. Okay, we will see how you choose the best one for any particular application. But this actually work if you have very huge head, you should use this one. So what does this rotor look like to you? It looked to me like a bunch of buckets, right? Half cups sitting everywhere, and we are shooting them with very high velocity. So that pipe basically open a hose, and that hose is shooting through each one of those buckets. Okay, you wish you will have more than like here he's showing 5, you know, like you want to show even more, but what's his problem? The problem is that because how tight those things are, you cannot really hit in everywhere. So you need to limit the places where you are hitting from. And also if you open like this, when the water hit this bucket, it needs to leave. right? So it basically hit the center, and then the water leave from this side and that side. And to get the maximum impact or the maximum momentum transfer between the two of them, you want to hit the plate when he's like really normal to you, right? Not when he was in an angle. You want to hit him when he's like this. So because when he is like this, then the guy next to him is in the way. So that's why you see all the plates are kind of what? Cut. Not complete bucket, not complete half cup. So they have all those openings so that when the water is hitting this guy, the guy that's still gonna get in or roll in, he's not in the way, and the water can go through it. Okay? So all those three different, basically three different kind, huh? And they call it impulse turbine. You remember reaction and impulse last week? And we said what's the reaction turbine? A turbine that the pressure drop a little bit in the stator and a little bit on the rotor. And if all the pressure drop only on the stator, it's called an impulse turbine. So there's high pressure over here in the pipe. Why? Because I have 100 meter behind me pushing me. And so once the water leave that hose and it's in the open atmosphere, it's now basically atmospheric. And so the water as a jet just come and hit, and during all this process, when the water come and hit and turn around, what happened to the pressure? Does not change because it's in the atmosphere. It's not in the pipe. It's not confined. So this is an impulse turbine because the rotor is exposed and the water have atmospheric pressure from the moment it left that nozzle, huh? In its journey to hit the bucket and splash up and down. It's all atmospheric pressure. So that's a pure impulse turbine. So of course this is not the case for this guy. I mean, the pressure here could still keep dropping inside the rotor because it's closed, right? And he can slowly drop. So how could one make the decision to, should I buy a Francis turbine? Like the people in Keystone, how did they pick the turbine that they need to use? Yes, the specific speed, right? We'll see how is that working. But first, let's look at this graph. This is showing us how large those turbines can get. So you can see as year progress, they're getting bigger and bigger. So one turbine is like what? 900 megawatt? That's a whole power plant, like the Jenks power station across the river from South Tulsa. It's 2 units, each unit is 450 megawatt. So just one turbine of those, that's the whole power plant, just one turbine. Okay, and the fuel is for free, right? Because you are not paying for the water. Clouds put the water in the dam, right? And so you don't pay ever for the fuel. So size wise, it can be as large as a power plant, and energy wise or cost wise, they basically are not paying for the fuel. But what you pay for is the initial cost, building the dam and putting the turbine, and this could be huge amount of dollars basically, especially for a big river, not a small river. It just could be like a country, a whole country cannot build it. So right now Ethiopia is building a huge dam in Africa on the Nile, and they couldn't pay for it themselves, so they have to basically get loans and investors so that they can build the dam, but it's a huge one, right? So, and of course there is maintenance cost, right? But you don't pay for the fuel. Very good. So here is a Francis turbine. You can see again the size, how large compared to a human. Okay, so the way to pick whether we should use all radial or, you see, this is called mixed, because the flow, and this is a mixed pump, okay, or if you're gonna leave like this, it become turbine. But the point is, doesn't come in exactly radial, right? So there is like this one, this is good mixed flow, right? So the flow come like this and he leave like this, didn't leave radial, didn't leave axial. This one is all axial because the flow come like this and leave like this. Of course, when he come like this, he come also with a tangential component that will be out of this space, and we leave with more tangential component if this was a propeller or a compressor, and you leave with less if he's actually extracting energy from us and with a turbine. So we consume his angular momentum. Okay. So, and the same thing for the turbines. So here are the turbines. And this is this part is the stator. This is the inlet guide vane. This is the part that will spin the fluid, but the rotor itself is here. So that's an axial rotor because the flow will come axial and leave axial, right? And this is the mixed one where the flow will come a little bit with an angle and leave axial, right? And eventually you go to the pure radial turbine where the flow come all radial and leave axial. And in the category by itself, the built-in wheel or the impulse turbine. So how people decide which one is more appropriate for them? So they figure out that the efficiency of those turbines, here is the efficiency. And what's the efficiency of any machine? Output divided by input. So the output will be the electric power or the work, at least mechanical work, that we will send to generator. And the input power will be, what will be the input power? That GH that we deliver. So the GH that we deliver to the turbine based on the delta Z minus the friction in the pipes, that's not the turbine problem. At the end, the GHT that you deliver over here, this HT, that GHT, that's the input power to the turbine. Now, will the turbine convert all this to mechanical power? No, it depends on how good that rotor is designed, and whether the inlet angle is really aligned really well with W, relative velocity. If the velocity is not aligned well, what will happen? He will come with a swirl, right? It will be horrible and you will have a lot of eddies. So I'm trying to say that if the velocity is coming like this, but then the plate is like this, and here's one, what will happen? The flow would basically rotate like this before he get in, right? Or even just like this. If the flow is coming like this, he will swirl before he get in. Those are friction. Those will eat from your kinetic energy. You will not be able to push this guy as efficiently as possible and get work from it. So there is losses, and this losses will increase as you go off design condition. And so they figure out that if we plot that efficiency against something called the specific speed, a dimensionless group, you will get all the impulse turbine to fit on one curve, all the radial turbine to fit on one curve. This is radial / mixed, and this is the axial machine. So what that tell us? It tells us that if our specific speed, and it's the specific speed, if you remember for fluid one, this combination of flow rate, head, okay, and the RPM that we are rotating with. If we end up here, it would not be smart to use anything but axial machine, because if I use radial machine, the efficiency will drop at that place. And if I'm gonna operate here, it's not really smart to use built-in wheel, because the built-in wheel efficiency will drop so much. right? So the best machine or the best kind that we will use is the one that will peak depending on in your particular flow rate and head. Okay, so here is the equation for the specific speed. So this is omega, okay, or the RPM. Basically omega is in the RPM, and this is the Q, the flow rate, okay, and this is the G, the gravity, and this is the head. So there is a specific speed for the pump and there is a specific speed for the turbine. Okay, so if we make those if we use SI units, radian per second and meter cube per second, meter per second square, and the H is in meter, this would be dimensionless. Okay, this number would be dimensionless. And the same thing for the turbine. So for the turbine, what do we got? We got the power. Power should be in what? Joule per second. The density of the water in G and H, and the omega. Omega should be radian per second. If you make everything in SI, this number will be dimensionless. Okay? And there is a scale for those dimensionless numbers. Okay? But in the US, we don't like to use dimensionless things. Also, we don't like to use meter cube per second. We rather use gallon per minute, and we rather use feet. And for the power, we rather use basically horsepower. So if we use, and for omega, we don't want to use our radian per second. We want to just use RPM. It's more convenient. So if we use those things, then, and let's forget about the G then, who cares? If we use those things on their units, horsepower and feet and RPM, then the specific speed is gonna be, it's gonna have units. It's not gonna be dimensionless. Okay? So we need to have our own interpretation to that number. So that number will have units, and let's not even try to figure out what this unit is. Okay, because the unit of this number will be square root of horsepower divided by feet to power 5 or 4 multiplied by RPM. Okay, so let's not even go what is that number. But the point is that number with all those units in will have its own scale. And so that scale, where is it? That scale will end up basically being used over here. Okay? And so you will use that scale, you use the power, the head, and you will figure out what is my number. If your number is 40, then you tell yourself, then I have to use a Francis type turbine. If you calculate that number and it's 100, you should basically use axial machine. I remember in one problem, the calculation was exactly like here. It landed exactly at that point. Okay? And so, well, then both of them are fine. But both of them will perform exactly the same way. But one thing that's really nice in this graph to notice is the units, the actual number here. And you will see that the hydraulic turbine efficiency go all the way up to 95%. The turbine could be 95%. So that's pretty impressive, right? 95%. And I would like you to remember this, because when we go to the next chapter, I will tell you that no wind turbine can ever get more than 59%. 59. That's the maximum for every wind turbine. And then I will ask you, how come then the hydraulic turbine, because they are the same concept, fluid, go, spin things, leave, and you get power. How is the hydraulic turbine can hit 95%, but the wind turbine, and there is a proof for it, a theoretical proof too, that you cannot hit more than 59% for a wind turbine. Yes, question.